Series 11 has seen some hard lessons learned in the first three events, but these 2 weeks mark the halfway point. If anyone needs to turn their championship hopes around, now is the time. Which of our competitors will do so? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch the PCA Sim Racing Series 11 Sport Class live here on Podium Esports. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth tonight is Roush Racing driver Joey Atterbury. Cameron Aubernon is on social media with Ryan Barrett producing while using cameras provided by Donkey Beard. And Joey, this is another one of those tracks that is just an absolute favorite for both fans and drivers.
It's hard to dislike Road America up here in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. And if you dislike it, we can meet at Siebken's and have a couple drinks afterwards. But having a talk about the track, turn number 1 out there, a great passing opportunity. Same thing with turn number 3. You actually see quite a few cars sneak down the inside there. But then you look down towards turn number 5. We're going to see a lot of big-time passes down there. That's probably the biggest break zone in the entire racetrack here, so look for a lot of action all race long down in turn number 5. And then you have a short jaunt up the hill through 6 and 7, back downhill into 8. You'll see a lot of cars take advantage going down into 8, especially if a competitor runs wide and doesn't carry the speed through that hurry downs turn number 7. And then comes probably the most famous section of Road America, the long downhill carousel that leads into the incredibly fast kink. You have to survive through there, and if you do, it sets up a very narrow braking opportunity into Canada Corner, the lowest part of the racetrack. And when I say lowest part of the racetrack, yes, it is climbing uphill all the way through 12, 13, through the final turn of 14, and uphill to the start-finish line.
So you don't want to run out of fuel at the last part of the lap because you're probably not going to make it. As we take a look at the points, and so far, Derek Dirksen has made this a good season. He didn't have a good finish at the Red Bull Ring, though, but the one drop week that they have counted does save him on that front. So his 2 wins stand at the top over Kevin Jokel, who currently is only a 4-point gap behind. He's keeping him honest for sure. James Martin then is a little bit of a leap back, but then it gets extremely tight because of those drop weeks, as we mentioned. So you can see a lot of drivers that are tied here through the remaining top 10 after the first 3 events of Series 11. But like I said, we've got more to come after that, but you got to start figuring things out from here on out if you want to make yourself a real challenger on this one. We are in the midst of the last of qualifying at this stage. You mentioned it on all the good places to try and overtake here, Joey. Hopefully qualifying position won't mean as much here as long as you're kind of in the range.
It does provide a lot of passing opportunities at Road America, so track position always important, but I'm looking through, we've got, I think, 40-plus cars that are taken to the track right now, so yeah, you want to be up towards the front, but I have a feeling no matter where you are in this field, you are going to be racing.
Carl missed his first lap. Looks like he had an off track somewhere, so that one got deleted. This will be a second time lap at his 3rd overall, and a 2:06.1 is actually a pretty good improvement. That'll jump him up into 15th on that one, so that will be very handy. Otherwise, he would have been starting 30th or lower. Derek Dirksen, by the way, on the provisional pole, has already taken his 3 laps with a 2:05.355, and the front row is only separated by 0.5 of a second. We have to remember, this is a 4-mile track. That is pretty darn tight, Joey.
It is, and like you were saying, the drivers have 3 laps, and just looking at those times, it's incredibly close at the front of the field. Watching Jim Walsh here, is currently sitting in the 18th position. Basically, these are the cars that still can make it to the start-finish line, but you see 10 seconds remaining. It'll be a race for Jim to make it to the line. I do think he'll get there, but it's going to be right at that time limit. See if this one will count or not.
It does, but it didn't make a difference, unfortunately, as it wasn't quicker. So it was all for naught, and that means our grid is now set. Derek Dirksen takes pole position as James Martin will be starting next to him. John Gibson will be in the 3rd spot followed by Rob Neville in the 4th spot. Then you've got Mike Sachs on the inside of row 3 with Steve Komatz next to him in 6th. Nick Whitehill will be in the 7th position. He's got Jason Finch starting next in 8th, as Gilles Estupiñán will be starting P9, and Curtis Crummell will round out your top 10.
We have Mark Foley here in 11th. In 12th is Nathan Albuhaka. Joseph Evers in 13th position. David Krutzler here in 14th. Carl Boccieri in 15th. Jeffrey Gardner starting in 16th. Randy Lervold in 17th. Jim Walsh in 18th. Charlie Ferrer in 19th. And Mark Lacombe in 20th.
Chris Costas starts 21st and only 100th of a second behind. It is Ken Eskridge starting 22nd. That's going to be a good battle if they stay together. Antonio Da Silva starts 23rd, followed by Jeremy Hall in 24th spot. From there, it is Rex Jarawala, who starts in 25th. After that, James Legault will be on the outside of that row. 27 sees Ankerberg Zona. Chad Kasian will be in at 28th. Gregory Goro will be 29th, and Patrick Gill 30th.
Then we're just going to scroll through the rest of the names, but we do have another 10 competitors here that put down a qualifying lap that will be taking the green flag, participating in tonight's race.
Yeah, only Kaufman and Ungia were unable to set a lap out there, but 41 drivers trying to compete here. This is definitely one of the bigger fields that they tend to have. 40 drivers that are racing, as unfortunately looks like the 808 car will not be beginning. They are already coming up and over the crest, and the green flag is out. It looks like it is a decent start for Dirksen, as he's going to start to eke ahead of Martin. In fact, Gibson gets a pretty good run. Oh, but we've got a massive accident midway through the field. Everybody else checking up from behind them, but it's caused a huge separation as they come through turn 1. Looks like only a small handful of cars, considering how packed up it was, were involved.
Yeah, but up front, it is Dirksen leading the way. I think I saw another car off there at the entry of turn 3. Somebody spun around, but John Gibson in the number 911 in 2nd place. James Martin in 3rd place. And then once you get back here to kind of outside the top 5, that's when that second pack really comes through, and it is very busy.
Yeah, Nick Whitehill at least was involved in it. Didn't catch who the other car was as they come down to turn 5 for the first time. This is usually where you have to watch out for the big accidents, but it looks like many of them have happened already. And down into this turn, I'm not seeing anybody spinning out there in the background, but we come up over the crest through turn 6, and now it's through the hurry downs to turn 8.
Yeah, a little bit of a short downhill here. Looks like everybody's kind of equal distance apart, so no big lunge moves. And then into the carousel for the first time, you start to really dive down the hill through this very, very long right-hander. You have plenty of camber in the track, too, to really grip up that car, and then it shoots you out onto this mini straight, head towards that fast kink.
So the good news is, with all those accidents, only Patrick Gill and Jason Finch have had to come to pit lane. Everybody else is out on track at this stage, and they make it through the kink successfully at the front of the field, down into Canada corner. Dirksen's too far away for anybody to make an attack, but it's definitely becoming a bit of a train behind Mike Sachs there in 4th place. Look at how many cars are stacked up behind him.
Absolutely, and we're only completing the first lap here at Road America. Joe, you were talking 4 miles around this place. It does take a minute to complete a lap or two as we look on board with Steve Komatz back here in P6 watching. Look at those triple screens, actually quadruple screen right there on top. Quite a setup.
Ooh, good run from Neville, who's going to try and go around the outside here. He's got the momentum, but he's not fully passed by the time they get to the end of it. Mike Sachs can't hold him back, though. Rob will move into that 4th position.
I don't think it's quite over yet as we still ride on board here down into turn 3, a very technical turn here at Road America. It seems straightforward, but the exit is so important. It leads you onto this really long straightaway that if you don't have the top speed, well, it leaves you vulnerable in that braking zone into turn 5.
But with it being a fixed setup for this group, nobody's got to worry about making sure to trim the car out because everybody's on the same bit. But it looks like the downforce of the wing, though, still offers a lot of drag. We saw on the front stretch, Rob versus Mike, that Rob managed to get almost fully past him. Then the car looked like it stalled out.
Well, and to talk about that just a little bit, because we're here in a train riding on board with Crutzler, but when you're on kind of a one-on-one turf, it's easier to draft up behind somebody. Now, if you're the 5th, 6th, 7th, 10th car in this train, well, it gets tougher and tougher to get that top speed, because guess what? Everybody in front of you also getting pulled along. So sometimes it is down to that track position from qualifying.
And I was checking real quick. They are on the high downforce setup as well. So that explains maybe why the drag is so huge. That will mean a lot of drafting on some of these long straights as they'll be cutting a huge hole in the air as we hop on board back with Sachs now. Starting to fall behind. It looks like he was a little bit of a plug in this group with him running away. And Steve Komatz is going to be the next one to try and catch up to him.
And you called it a little bit of a plug, but I think that really the hungry cars, looks like, I believe that was Carl Baccieri in the number 80 having problems up through turn number 13 that lap. So unfortunately, he's going to fall through the order.
Oh, yeah, he definitely hit the wall hard there coming out of turn 13. That is unfortunately a very tricky one as we get a little look to the inside there coming up to turn 1. Here's what happened to Carl. In fact, I've seen a car that's been flipped over from the impacts that can be made on this left-hand side wall.
And up through turn 13 right there, you come up over the crest. You climb up out of the hill. So there's a lot of vehicle dynamic stuff going on, and you just have to really be careful about that pendulum effect, and especially the grip on those rear tires.
James Martin sitting in third is caught up to John Gibson as well. They may be losing a little touch with Dirksen, but they're still willing to fight for this P2 as they come up to the Corvette Bridge and into turn 6. Once again, we're going to look off the back of John Gibson's 911 machine. I'm sure that's a sought-after number in this league as they swing down through turn 7 and head into the braking zone. Not nearly close enough to try and make an attack quite yet, but he's got time.
You know, the one nice thing about the Porsches, Joe, you were talking about the numbers. At least they've got a few chassis you can kind of pick from, whether it's 911, 992, 997, or quite honestly, my personal favorite, the 964.
I was going to say 959 is probably one that a lot of people want as well. So I'm sure there's a number of those that drivers are going to try and scramble to grab when they have their chance to try and pick them out. Rex Girawala, in the meantime, sitting back in the mid-pack, running in the number 7 machine, has got himself actually a pretty good buffer, both ahead and behind. Lervold's in front of him. Bluen is in behind him, so he can focus on his race for a bit.
And this is through the lowest part of the racetrack here, coming up to Canada Corner. You got to really nail the brakes here, get that brake pressure because you got to slow the thing down, but stand on the gas from here on out. Look at how steep uphill it is. This is turn 13 where you crest over the hill just a little bit momentarily before going through the final turn here at Road America. And then you look, another giant hill up towards that start-finish line.
Massive, massive hill. That's what I was talking about earlier, about not wanting to run out of fuel at the wrong time because you won't really be able to coast up that thing. Back to Martin once again on Gibson, coming through turn 3, one of the most crucial corners on the track, heading down the Moraine sweep. He needs to get a good exit here, and it does look like he's gaining a tiny bit. Not sure if it's going to be enough, but he's within about 4/10.
Well, you were talking about those downforce, the high downforce setup, and you're seeing it kind of come alive with that battle as we jump back to Greg Bluen back here, chasing for P21 is what he's doing, chasing Rex Jarwala after we saw that a little bit earlier.
Yeah, it just said he had a buffer, and that's gone, so no more relaxing for him. Ankerberg Zona in front of him, and Greg Bluen behind him, but he's going to try and see if he can poke his nose. Rex can't quite make the pass down into turn 5. Goes to the inside, maybe more as a defense this time, trying to cover off turn 6 there, but it looks like Greg Bluen's not going to really make an advance on that one as he stays put. And Gilles in the number 5 car was off. Yeah, there he is right there. Out of turn 6. Not sure how he got there, but he falls to 27th.
Let's see if there is contact involved here. We keep talking about turn 13 and over crest. Well, same thing here at turn number 6. Yeah, just on the outside of the racing line and up over the crest. It is a very low grip area. You need to be really all over that inside apex curb. Otherwise, you're out in danger no man's land.
Stupendous and under threat from Mungia there, who started from the very back of the field, but we switch away from that back to the front as Mike Sachs and Rob Neville have their ongoing battle that has at least changed hands once, but hasn't since then. This is another one of those tracks, especially with this high downforce. I wonder if it would pay big dividends, Joey, for Mike to just kind of sit patiently behind Rob.
Well, yes and no. So talking about those setups now, I know that we are on a fixed setup here, but a high downforce setup at Road America is actually a very, very fast car. You can be incredibly aggressive with it in the brake zone, so you can really put these Porsches wherever you want to. So I think that if you can catch somebody, you have the aggression, you have the grip level underneath you to make or at least attempt that pass.
Down to the inside for the number 24. We're going to see a pass up into the first turn. Yep, he is all the way through. Antonio Da Silva takes 24th over Greg Bluen now. So appropriate position for that number 24 machine. This is all still near what we were watching a little bit earlier as Gerald Wallace just up the road. And coming off of turn 3 there, still nose to tail between them. Nick Paglia looks like he is going to be the next one to try and see if he can get a move done, as he's got a nice toe coming down the moraine sweep, heading towards turn 5. Will he try and duck his nose to the inside? No, much deeper on the binders for the 5.56.
What I really enjoy seeing out of this entire race group here is they're not really abusing those curbs going into turn 5. You see some of the lines going in there, get a little bit adventurous, but we're going to jump up here to Nathan in P8, currently chasing down Mark Foley in the number 16 right in front of him. Coming through the carousel, get that acceleration zone, and this is just such a fun corner, no matter what car you're in. Obviously a little bit better in a Porsche every time, but it is so fast, and the commitment level through there is incredibly high.
It is. Unfortunately, that means that the risk of a wreck is also quite high. So you better know what you're doing. And Thomas Doherty, I think, wisely decides to back out as he chases Ankerberg Zona for P20. But that means that he checked up. Scott Nell now has a good chance. You can see there in the rear view perspective. Oh, but he breaks too deep. He's going to get into the back of Anker. Anker goes a little bit wide. None of the cars go off track, amazingly. Thomas Doherty, though, is the one that might lose out, as he's now wheel to wheel. He'll fend around the outside of Bill Mitchell Bend, and now it's starting to stack up, and we got a car off course again there.
Oh, and it also looks like, I think Scott Nell got in a little bit deep into 14, and this was, I believe, Elson turned around there at turn 13, so I just have a feeling, though, I mean, we're only 10 minutes, 11 minutes into this, and I told you, it doesn't matter if you're at the front, in the middle, or at the back, you're gonna be racing.
This is Andrew Elsom here, so let's see what put him off to the side of the course. Is it another case of just losing grip over Bill Mitchell Bend? A little bit of curb, I'd say, involved in that one.
Yeah, the over crest plus with the curb, right? He upset the car as he went over the crest. You called it, Joe, and just goodbye from there.
Back to Abu Haka. He's been kind of quietly doing his thing. He and Mark Foley really up 4 positions within the top 10. It gets extremely hard to make those higher spots up once you start to crack into the top of the field. So we look back from Foley at him. This gives you a sense of just how much of a downhill it is through this portion of the track. And exiting off of turn 8. Now they have to swing it back around, as we can see the sun going behind the beautiful hills up here in Wisconsin.
I love this place. You know, I have the incredible fortunate to be able to race here and spend a lot of time at Road America. It is always fantastic to go out there to Wisconsin. Doesn't matter what car you're in or what you're doing out there, just a little slice of heaven as Curtis Crummell still trying to get around here. This is about a 5-car train here for what is the 7th place position.
Yeah, Curtis looked a little bit unsteady coming through the kink, but he held it together in the end. Says this is definitely a train forming, being led by Mark Foley, although he's breaking away somewhat. We go back to Ankerberg Zona once again, who is still carrying on despite the big thwack to the rear of the car, and he's going to chop off Thomas Doherty down through Canada Corner. Didn't look like there was much damage on the back of that 248 as we watched briefly from the back of Thomas. That's Andrew Long that is chasing in the black number 21.
And since you mentioned the damage, it's always a little bit of a guessing game on where it's going to kind of affect the car here in iRacing. And I would say that if you're going to have damage, at least on a road racing car, on the back of the car, I'll take it, because usually you want the front end in that clean air. But here we go. Thomas Doherty is going to look down to the inside of turn number 1 on anchor. He's going to get late on the brakes. Can he keep the car tucked down in line? A nice textbook pass and 1.
Yeah, it didn't look like he was fighting that one too hard. Now we get a much better look at the rear of the car. Almost too good of a look there, as he nearly gets punted once again by a different driver. Andrew Long doing a better job of staying away from anchor, but he also still gets himself a massively good run. And in fact, it looks like there's damage on the front of anchor's car.
I think sometimes when you're in these kind of multiple car trains, you get involved in some of the stack ups, and yeah, it's just like a fender bender. You get hit from the front, you get hit from the back, and you see some lunges even being made between Antonio Da Silva and Scott Nell back there as well. So I just think that with 25 minutes left, these drivers, they don't want to make the contact, but sometimes it does happen.
Especially with how close we're seeing the racing out here, and Nell unable to hold back to Silva, who takes 22nd with that nice move. As we jump back forward to Crummell once again, this is the battle for 8th position. We were watching Abu Haka a little bit earlier. He is now up 5 positions, so both he and Foley have managed to take it at least once since we last looked here. Look how much they're cutting to the inside of Canada Corner, kicking up the dirt over the curves.
There you see Charlie Ferrer in the number 11. He's all over the back of the car we're riding on board with, Joseph Evers. So I think this is an angry little pack right here. See who gets the run up out of the final turn onto the front straightaway. Actually looks pretty equal distant, and I mentioned it earlier, with these downforce levels, being that 3rd car in the draft train, it can be frustrating. You're looking at the highest speeds you'll ever see down the straightaway, but you're not actually gaining on anybody because the car in front also getting pulled along.
Just that DRS train, as you call them, unfortunately causing headaches for the drivers. But here comes Nick Paglia in the number 28 on the inside of Da Silva, trying to see if he can demote him. Another one. Definite damage on the back of the 24, though, as you can see it dented in. And they're going to go 2x2 Noah's Ark into turn 1, with Nell taking a spot and Paglia taking one as well.
And Paglia is actually going to keep the momentum down into turn 3. Look down to the inside here. He's not going to have the room, but let's see what kind of exit he gets out of 3. Now this car right in front of him does have that rear end damage of anchor and sitting in 22nd. So I have a feeling Nick Paglia going to try to take advantage into turn number 5. He's sitting right there in the slipstream. Now he pokes out drivers left. Does he bait anchor way too deep into the brake zone? No, they all get it slowed up.
Oh, but he slips up on the exit of the corner. No pass happening, though, as we cut away. I can tell you, I kept my cameras over there just in case. Abu Haka, in the meantime, on Mark Foley. These two almost starting to make me wonder if they're working together, because we haven't seen them battling at all. That, or they're just very even on pace.
Well, let's check the lap times of what they're doing here. A 206.0 from Nathan. 206.4 from Mark that last time by. And what I'm curious about, 5th place right in front of him, a 206.4. So very, very equal pace going on. Kind of like what we saw in qualifying, how close really that top 10 was. You have to fight it out, and track position is so important.
Yeah, it looks like it is proving difficult, at least for these guys, to try and just find that edge as they come onto the main straight. And look at him start to pull away. Foley with a wonderful exit out of the final turn. Meanwhile, down into the corner, Anchor just can't get away from the action. Paglia did manage to get by this time. Da Silva's still behind him, though, as they come across Bill Mitchell-Benn. In fact, I think over the radio, I just heard Anchor announce that he's pitting this time.
Ooh, and you know, that's actually a good thing, because we haven't talked about that at all as we ride on board with Anchor. Come up the hill, and you can actually keep your foot in it, but you have to make it slow down by the cones right there. Don't overspeed, and then you have to wait forever before you actually get to some of these pit stalls down here.
Now, I'm curious where he'll come out because this is a long, long pitch straight that they have to go up. And I think it was something like a minute and a half that the last car on the lead lap was compared to the leader. So very likely he's still going to come out in traffic. So I think it's probably a good move considering how much action he was in the midst of. But it often doesn't quite work out like we'd hope as we get a car already heading back out. And that was Rex Jawala. Oh, he's a much higher up driver to be taking an early stop.
Well, and to specifically talk about this car right here, all of the drivers have one faster pair available to him. And remember, Bergson, he had that damage on the back end of the car, so I don't blame him for kind of dipping down as early as possible to get that faster pair. And now he's got a car that he can go back out there and do his full pace with.
Yeah, and earlier you said that, you want the back to be damaged. I don't know if that's necessarily as true for Porsches, though.
Now, hang on. I'm going to argue the new ones, no. Now, these aerodynamic bits, they're so important, but back in my day, Joe, I remember racing 996s and 997s, and at Daytona, they would purposely clip on those rear bumpers with very, very little, very, very weak, fragile fasteners, and all of a sudden, when that bumper came off at Daytona, it was worth a good 4 or 5 miles an hour.
Oh, gosh, golly darn, our bumper came off. What do you know? Well, then,
exactly.
So Foley up here in sixth place still is trying to catch up to Steve Komatz in front of him, especially now that Jarawala has left their battle behind. But this is our leader, Derek Dirksen. At first, he was starting to pull away, but look, that gap is almost exactly the same as it was early in the race. Still only a second and a half, so he's not exactly leaving them in the dust.
No, and that's a great point. So the 505 here, when you're out front, you have to manage the race, but you also have to not make any sort of mistakes. It looks like Derek is up for the job right now, but John Gibson in that 911, he's right there. James Martin in that 705. I really think that the entire top three, if one of them makes a mistake, all of a sudden it's just going to compress right on up.
I think you're right. I think they got to try and be flawless out there if they really want this to go their way. We're past the halfway point of this event. We've only seen what looks like about half a dozen cars that have stopped in for their official stop. A number of others had to come in, take repairs, or their spare car. So they'll likely owe us another pit stop later on. But Dirksen here, who keeps himself at least that arm's length past John Gibson, not under direct threat at the moment. What about Crummell back here in the 8th position? Joseph Evers, they're chasing Charlie Fair as well, trying to vie for the final steps on the top 10. Ooh, this is a very good run for Charlie.
See if he can get down to the inside in Canada Corner. It is so narrow down here. It really seems like a couple funnel effects as the straightaway kind of weaves back and forth. And now, keep mentioning it, just climb up the hill here. Charlie Fair just following right in the tire tracks of Joseph Evers in that number 830. Come around the final turn, and oh, actually Joseph slips up just a little bit, doesn't grab that apex with the nose, but crucially is able to put the power down. Charlie Fair closer than ever.
And we've seen how important it is to be nice and tight to your rival to get that slipstream. But Evers is pulling from Crummell in front of him. He might not be as close, but I think that is saving his bacon. Yeah, you could see was not able to gain. Charlie Fair, despite getting a much better run off the turn, remains back in that 10th position.
Now we got to get through turn number 3, and this was a pass being made. This was Ken Eskridge going around Chris Costas here, so now Ken assumes the 13th position. Let's see if he can get through turn number 3 here. Chris giving chase, and actually Chris really nice and tidy compared to the number 32 right in front of him. Joe, this is going to set him up down into turn 5.
It absolutely is, but look at the drift across the track using the way the straightaways weave back and forth to his advantage. Costas just going to fading across the track, down side by side into turn 5, way off to the exit there for Chris Costas. Means that he's not going to be able to get that position quite yet, and Ken Eskridge will remain in 13th.
And so now all Eskridge has to do is kind of put together the next 4 or 5 corners. He's not close enough to make a move down in here in turn 8, so don't even look in your mirrors at this point. Just hit your brake zone, hit your apex, and then focus on the carousel. through the kink. Then you can check your mirrors down on that back straightaway. But it looks like Ken Eskridge, after making that pass, is starting to pull away from Costas just a little.
That's what he needs right now, for sure. Coming down into the kink, down towards that low part of the circuit. We're going to look a little bit farther forward, back to Evers once again. Stuck, sandwiched between Crummell and Ferrer. And he, once again, will need that slipstream probably, because look at how close Charlie's starting to encroach upon that rear camera on the car. This is that turn I was talking about, coming onto the main straight, longest straight on the track. You need to be good, and oh, that's not good at all for Curtis Crummell. He goes fully off the course, and in fact, they're all going to spread out because Evers pits, Ferrer keeps going, and Crummell loses both places.
It is a bit like watching a formation flight there, just kind of all disband from each other, and all of a sudden, Charlie Ferrer finds himself with nobody pull him along the straightaway here. So now it is Curtis Crummell behind Charlie Ferrer. David Krutzler is in that 10th place position. So the strategy cards are starting to fall, and we'll just have to keep an eye on who's going to stretch it the furthest and who's coming in.
Yeah, I think they got a couple more minutes, most likely, before we're at the end of that pit window for what we've seen earlier on in the season. But we've been surprised before as to what the cars are able to do, especially at tracks like this, which tend to suck up a lot of fuel with all the long, fast straightaways. And watching now back to that fight once again, heading down into the braking between Eskridge and Costas. Chris just can't seem to get quite close enough. Let's watch on board and see what the handling looks like.
Both of these cars here, they've had a great race so far. Chris, who we're riding on board with, he's up 8 positions. So I think that if he can just kind of attach the fishing line to the back of Ken Eskridge, who is up 8 positions himself. I'm sorry, 10 positions is up Ken. So both of these cars still making their way up through the field. But you were talking about the handling, little bit of an understeer here through the carousel, but that is not any surprise right there. It is such a long corner. You really have to be patient with the car. And then through the kink here, the thing is just on rails.
The good news is I saw very little counter steering, though. So if he's just dealing with a push, at least it is behaving itself. Meanwhile, Will Mungia, remember I kept mentioning that he started from the very back. He didn't set a lap time in qualifying. 23 positions gained by this 907 car. Some of those were the pit stops, so he still owes us one. Speaking of which, I just saw Mike Sachs head in. Looks like Abu Hanka as well. All right, now we got a lot of the front runners coming in.
Yeah, I think I see Nathan, like you were saying. Curtis Crummell is also in from that 10th place position. So all right, now the cars are coming down pit lane, and we really haven't talked about anything other than coming down pit lane. You have to hit that brake marker so you get that pit lane speed limit, and then most importantly, do not overshoot your pit box. That's just time that you can give up. That's hard-earned time that you've made on the track.
Absolutely, and looks like they all pretty much hit their marks. They're relatively short stops here because they are just loading up on fuel. Nobody is really taking tires with the stops being so short. Just getting my words all mixed up today. Coming back out on the track, though, very close there between Crummell and Ferrer still, but they come out just behind Joseph Evers.
And I'm just kind of looking through everything. I believe Mike Sachs is still the furthest forward of the cars that have come down pit road, and he is in the 11th place position. So everybody inside of the top 10, they have not come down pit road, including our leader who we're riding on board with here, Derek Dirksen. You got to wonder if he's going to be coming down this time.
I'm pretty sure it's getting to be it. These guys just, I guess they have nothing to lose to go along, because that is the safer strategy traditionally. Waiting to see if anybody is going to be ducking in as our leader now approaches up into the final turn here in just a moment. He's still got Gibson, Martin, Komatz, Foley all behind him, also staying out as long as they can. The black and white number 505 will indeed be pitting in, and he's going to be followed by Gibson.
It looks like the entire top 3 is coming in. I wouldn't be surprised if everybody has to come in at this point, but The whole reason why they stretched it as far as you can is because here in iRacing, that fuel, well, it equals weight, just like how it does in real life. And the lighter you can make the car, the faster it's going to go.
Indeed. Tends to prove to be the quicker strategy because of that, and we're seeing these leaders try to play it that way, and the others trying to do a bit of an undercut, see if they can do something different to try and jump them. Not seeing any of these front runners overshoot the pit box yet. Dirksen, though, went up on the jacks, I just realized.
This could prove to be a very fatal strategy call, but hey, check that out. I think it gets down and out pretty fine.
Okay, so maybe he may have forgotten to uncheck it. By the time he checked it, they'd only done 1 or 2 tires, so he could have gotten away with it. Now, what that will do, though, is that may mess with the handling of the car a little bit.
It could, but let's kind of be real. It's 11 minutes left. He's been the fastest car on track. Don't let it get to your head if you're the driver out there. Just focus on the job that you need to do.
Charlie Fair side by side with Krutzler that time by, and they've also got lap traffic. Patrick Gill, who is trying to get out of the way a little bit. Joseph Evers, and a bit of a run from Curtis Crummell. It's all starting to open up, and unfortunately for Patrick Gill, I don't think he can just lift off and get out of this.
No, it is going to get really busy here into turn number 5. Let's see who takes advantage. Almost 3 wide, but I like the Noah's Ark 2x2 into turn number 5. And it's actually, I believe, Charlie Fair trying to take advantage now up the hill into 6. He's the one moving forward.
Yeah, use that as a pick perfectly. And Krutzler's actually going to lose a position. Now Crummell sneaks by as, we haven't talked about Mark Lacombe here in a bit. He has jumped up 9 positions since the start, sitting in 11th, now thinking maybe a top 10 is on the cards.
He's the caboose on this 5-6 car train as we go down through the carousel here. Let's see what Mark Lacombe can do, closing up on Krutzler in that number 74. Got to keep it on the track. He was drifting out wide, but he keeps his foot in it. Sometimes you do have to pin it to win it.
He's going to try and stick with him. Now down through the kettle bottoms. Don't think he's quite close enough, although in front of them it does look like Crummell could threaten on Patrick Gill. Oh, wait, actually, Gill, I keep forgetting, Gill's a lapped car. So, as much as he doesn't want him to fight him, Gill still gets in the way. Crummell is held up. Krutzler has a chance to try and steal that position back.
But watch out for Mark Lacombe, because I think it was actually Krutzler that kind of got choked up, but everybody is playing nice. You gotta love to see nobody really shoving their nose down into areas that they don't need to be. And there goes that lapped car getting out of the mix. So it is Mark Lacombe. He's gonna have an opportunity here into turn 1, right up in the slipstream.
So Patrick still owed us his actual pit stop. Now he's finally out of the way, looking down to the inside. Can Mark manage the pass? No, he's going to be chopped off at the apex by Krutzler, who still gets some help from Crummell up the straightaways. He's going to need it here because look at how close Mark still is.
Yeah, let's see what kind of corner exits they get, and actually pretty equal from all 3 of these drivers. And I just want to give credit to this whole field, Joe. I know that we've seen a couple little incidents, but look at all of the racing room. Most of the incidents we've seen haven't really been contact. They've been solo spins.
Yeah, after we had all the mess at the start of the race, it has really started to kind of even out into the spectacular event that we've had into the sunset. Still being led by Dirksen up at the front, but this group here looks like this is a race for 4th currently. That's Komatz leading Sachs and Albuhaca. And Nathan, who was he racing with earlier? I'm trying to remember. Was that Sachs? I don't think so. I think it was Komatz, actually.
I believe you're right. I think that Nathan has just continued to work his way up, and Mike Sachs is actually kind of chasing Steve Komatz right here in P4. So Steve is going to have to use all of those monitors, all of that information in front of him to hold off 2 hungry wolves at the end of this race.
It wasn't Komatz because he's only up 2. It was someone that was up the same number of positions as him. As these monstrous screens helping Steve certainly wheel his way around here. And up and out of the woods, essentially, is back half of the course very much covered by foliage. But then you open up here as they climb up to the front stretch. Mike Sachs going to try and see if he can keep Nathan from making any more positions back there in P6.
And I think that Mike is doing exactly that because he was able to kind of pull away from that 958, and now he is using the toe from Steve Komatz right in front of him. Not close enough here to turn one, but I have a feeling that this 599 car is going to be applying all sorts of pressure here to Steve Komatz, especially into turn 5. Let's watch the exit out of this corner.
This is going to be so important. And this looks like a pretty good run off the turn by Nathan, the 958 sticking with him. But Steve Komatz was a bit slow. He's now really offering a better pull to Mike Sachs as they all weave across the track to try and break that slipstream coming down into the braking zone of turn 5. Mike looking very strong, but maybe a bit weak off the corner as he slides the car.
100%. I see that 599, the middle car, right? This kind of teal and orange car, incredibly aggressive on the brakes, and he does get the car stopped, but it costs him a ton on corner exits. So sometimes you actually have to give up a little at the beginning of the corner to capitalize on the corner exit, set yourself up in a passing opportunity. And there's another great example, just going charging in way too deep into 8, and it affects him on the exit.
In the battle for 17th position here going wide, that's Rob Neville with Jeffrey Gardner just behind them. Battle for 18th position. And they've also got Ankerberg Zona in behind them. That's Andrew Elson at the tail of the train, who is a lap down, not for position. 3-car fight here.
Well, that third car in line, Anchor, remember, he was one of the cars to first come down pit road, so he's got 7 laps on his tires compared to the car right in front of him, only 4 laps on his tires, so a little bit of some disparity there on the tire wear.
Back up forward once again to the fight here for the top 4 positions. Going from 4th, 5th to 6th. Ooh, I think Steve, again, looking like he had a bit of trouble coming off the turn. Much better for Mike Sachs, who was pushing too hard on his corner entries. Looks like maybe he learned the lesson this time. Don't know if he's got enough to try and attack into turn 1. He's starting to run out of laps. He thinks he's got enough. He's going to show his nose, but couldn't get the car down to the apex first.
And see what happens when he does that. It just allows Nathan to close right up on the back end there. So sometimes you have to express a little bit of patience in order to get that move done at the right time. And actually, here we go. This is going to be a good opportunity for Mike. Following Steve Komatz, as long as he can stay in that slipstream, he's been so aggressive on the brakes. I would expect a big-time lunge here to 5. Steve moves defensive. Let's see if Mike goes down the inside. No, he thinks better of it.
He's still trying his heart out there to see if he can get that pass done. The more he keeps doing that, the more that Nathan's going to get a chance to try and see if he can pull an over-under on him. In fact, right here, it's going shallow to the corner. Mike just trying every which way to see if he can get this overtake done. He starts to fall back once again. Abu Haka sees if he could do something into turn 8, but decides not to try and show himself in the mirrors this time. What about maybe out of the carousel?
And see what kind of run they get here. It is so critical to get your foot down and carry the speed through the kink here. Mike Sachs as well as Nathan Abuhalka doing a nice job, and now through the kink. Got to keep it on the racetrack here. Everybody nice and tidy, hitting their marks. It is going to be coming out of Canada corner. Let's make sure everybody gets the car stopped on time.
Going to be 2 laps to go when they cross the line this time. Not much left in this event. If you've got anything in it, you got to start throwing it at them. Let's see who's got the guts, who's got the grip left in it at the end of this race to vie for valuable points up at the front. Remember, this is the halfway point of the season. You need to start really collecting these good finishes.
Now, remember how aggressive Mike Sachs has been into turn number 1? He's actually a little bit closer down the front straightaway this time. Steve Komatz, I think, has learned. He's putting his car right in the middle. Now he drifts back onto the racing line. Let's see. Mike does not make the lunge. He's going to sit back, be patient here in turn number 1. I like this approach because really you want to make the pass down in turn 5. That's where you want to secure that position.
And Steve's been doing phenomenal as well, although as I say that, he's a little off the apex. Not sure if this is going to be commentator's curse, because he's been fending them off well. There have been some dives, and he hasn't looked like he's flinched at all.
So here comes Sachs. This is going to be an opportunity. You see Komats go to the middle of the road here, go real defensive, and Nathan way deep on the brakes to the outside. Thankfully, he does get the car stop, but look at the run Mike Sachs has. He might have an opportunity in 6, but that's not a conventional passing zone. Komats covers it off.
Shuts the door in his face. Mike cannot make the pass quite yet. He knew that was a good opportunity, but just couldn't get enough straightaway to try and make the pass. Meanwhile, we jump a little bit farther back once again. This is down around 24th position to Silva, being chased by Bluen and Boccieri, who's back in it.
Absolutely good to see Carl back out onto the racetrack, and all 3 of these cars going down into that middle straightaway here into turn number 5. The action zone all day long. You can sit there at Road America. You see turn 5 from there. You also see the final turn. It is a great place to sit in the grandstand.
Yeah, and it's not just the grandstand. There's a hillside on the inside of the turn. There's all sorts of spots. There's another hill that is up around turn 13 that you can go watch from. Fantastic spot on the track all around. Carl Boccieri still doing what he can to try and close in and make up for that early spin and get back into this race. Also, Dirksen just took the white flag. There he is now.
That is our leader, so only 1 lap to go for Derek up front, but this is still that battle for the 4th place position. I see Mike Sachs, you know his eyes are getting big because he's closing in on Komats here into turn number 1. Is this the opportunity? He's going down to the inside. He's going to send the Hail Mary. Komats, and contact there in 1.
Oh, and trying to cut back underneath. That was Abu Haka getting hit by Evers, who saw a chance to maybe get both positions in 1. Evers goes off track. Ferrer is going to pick up a spot because of that. So it all came down to the end, and you said it was a Hail Mary. Unfortunately, he's maybe going to have to say a few for some repentance.
Absolutely, and you know, I think he was far enough alongside to earn kind of a full lane of racing room. Let's see if it was given here, and it's really tough. We could armchair quarterback these events all day long, but I will leave it up to race control on that one.
Yeah, that one definitely has to be looked at pretty thoroughly to really try and decide there. Yeah, I mean, fair game. Everybody was doing what they could, going for the defensive, going on the attack, and it just wound up 2 cars cannot occupy the same space, at least not in this case when the netcode behaves as it should, as Derek Dirksen comes down through the kettle bottoms as the engine just echoes off the trees. If you want a good spot to watch from, this one is loud down here through this final run into Canada Corner, so bring those earplugs. But Dirksen, with just a couple corners to go, may have given up a 10th or 2 on the last lap, but it's just not enough. Gibson was too little too late, while Derek just manages his pace to the finish line. The 5:05 is going to lead from start to finish and take his 3rd win of Series 11 here at Road America.
A fine display of driving from Derek here tonight at Road America. John Gibson really giving chase there in the 2nd place, and then the number 705 of James Martin will cross the line, your 3rd place. And final podium finishers, we watched Charlie Ferrer try to claim this 4th place position from Nathan, who took advantage of that skirmish there in turn 1 on the last lap.
Nothing doing, though. They'll finish all of 2/10 apart from one another at the very end of it. Other cars getting very close at the finish. And as they crossed the line, we saw a real chase up there, but I'm not seeing on my timing and scoring who that was so close together. Meanwhile, it looks like Andrew Long is going to barely finish ahead of Rob Neville. Maybe Rob's going to have the slipstream. I don't think he's got the speed. They will cross the line, and poor Rob finishes less than a 10th behind his rival.
It's really difficult to get the pass done by start-finish, and it's agonizingly close sometimes when you're in that slipstream, but looks like we're actually going to have the majority of these cars. We had 40 cars taking the green flag here, and I believe we've got, I think, 33, almost 35 still running.
Indeed, and quite a few on the lead lap. Estupinen in the number 5, going to be our last one to get to that checkered flag. So here is our unofficial results. Derek Dirksen on the top here once again, taking his 3rd win, as John Gibson is going to collect points in behind him, at least in 2nd. Martin will be 3rd, and Abu Haka from 12th to 4th today. Unbelievable drive. Farrer was 5th, as Curtis Crummell was P6. Joseph Evers in 7th today, followed by Krutzler in 8th. Lacombe in 9th, up from 20th, and Eskridge from 22nd to 10th.
Then we have Mike Sachs here in 11th. Remember, he was involved in that last lap kind of skirmish there. Finishes in 11th. Jim Walsh in 12th. Chris Costas finishing 13th. Steve Komatz was the other party involved there. Drops all the way back to 14th, unfortunately. Randy Lervold in 15th. Rex Jarwala finishing in 16th. Good race for Rex, up 9 positions. Not as good as Andrew Long, though. Our biggest mover of the race, at least that I see, up 22 positions. Started back there in 39th, finishes 17th. Rob Neville in 18th. Anker Bergson had just an absolutely action-packed race, comes home 19th. And Mark Foley in 20th.
Then from there you see the rest of our finishers here today, and what was certainly a field that was ready to fight, which we kind of expected from our previous results here in the sport class, and it gave us no shortage of entertainment. Well, I think we saw exactly why this is a crowd and driver favorite today, Joey.
I love Road America, and when you put 40 Porsches on it, it's going to be a good time. I know that there's going to be broken hearts in racing. That's what racing is about. That's why we do it. But I think the action put on up front, as well as the mid-pack throughout the entire race, it was awesome fun to watch.
We've got more racing to come, so make sure and join us on Wednesday night, February 28th, for the club class here at Road America. And a big thank you to the steering committee as well at PCA Sim Racing, along with those behind the scenes at Podium Esports, Rachel and Ryan Bauer. Also, a huge thanks to our team tonight, Joey, Cameron, and Dougie. Thank you so much for watching tonight's broadcast of PCA Sim Racing. I'm Joe Pete, and I'll see you on the track.